The night over Ouagadougou was deep and silent, wrapped in a darkness that seemed to swallow sound itself. Stars studded the African sky like diamonds scattered carelessly across black velvet, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding below. On the balcony of the presidential palace, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood alone, his silhouette cutting a solitary figure against the vast expanse of night. His eyes were fixed on the darkness beyond, searching for threats he knew were out there but could not yet see. The air carried whispers of conspiracy, the metallic tang of fear, and something else. The smell of gunpowder that seemed to hang perpetually over Burkina Faso these days. At 34, Ibrahim had already survived 3 coup attempts since taking power. He had learned to trust his instincts, and tonight those instincts were screaming. What he didn't know was that the most dangerous attack wasn't coming from a gun, a bomb, or an army. It was coming disguised as something far more insidious, a beautiful face, a gentle smile, and eyes that would soon haunt his dreams. 3,000 miles away in Paris, his fate was already being sealed. The conference room in Paris was anonymous by design. Located in an unmarked building in the 8th arrondissement, it housed meetings that would never appear in any official record. The mahogany table was surrounded by men in expensive suits, representatives from defense contractors, mining corporations, and intelligence agencies. Their faces were illuminated by the cold glow of laptop screens displaying profit projections and resource maps of West Africa. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," said Henri Beaumont, a silver-haired man in his 60s who had spent 40 years manipulating African politics from this very room. He clicked a remote, and Ibrahim Traoré's face appeared on the screen. Young, determined, wearing military fatigues. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, 34 years old. Current leader of Burkina Faso following the September 2022 coup. Former geology student turned military officer. And our biggest headache in the Sahel region. Another man, representing a major uranium mining conglomerate, leaned forward. "What's the status on our operations?" "Suspended," Beaumont replied grimly. "He's reviewing all foreign mining contracts. Kicked out French troops. Turned to Russia for security cooperation. Talking about resource sovereignty and African independence. The usual anti-colonial rhetoric. But this one actually means it. We've dealt with troublemakers before," someone muttered. "Not like this one," Beaumont countered. "Traditional coup attempts won't work. He's popular with the military and the people. Too many eyes watching. We need something cleaner. Something that looks natural." The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. "What about an accident?" suggested a CIA liaison. Too obvious. "The international community is watching Burkina Faso closely after the previous coups. Poison? Possible, but his security has tightened considerably. We'd need someone on the inside." Beaumont smiled slowly, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Actually, I have someone in mind. Someone perfect." He pressed the remote again, and a new face appeared on the screen. A young woman with striking features, long black hair, sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Amara Dubois. 28 years old, French-Senegalese, trained by DGSE for 7 years. Speaks fluent French, English, Arabic, and several West African languages. Expert in close-quarters combat, toxicology, and most importantly, seduction and psychological manipulation. A honey trap? Someone asked skeptically. "More than that," Beaumont replied. "She doesn't just seduce. She becomes whatever the target needs. A confidant, a lover, a true believer in their cause. She's completed 11 successful missions. The targets never see it coming because they genuinely believe she's fallen for them." "Has she ever failed?" "Never." A younger operative raised his hand. "What's her background? Why does she do this?" Beaumont's expression hardened. Her father was a French diplomat. Her mother was Senegalese. When she was 15, her father was killed in a terrorist attack in Mali. She blamed African instability, weak governments, and what she saw as the chaos that comes when Western influence withdraws. She volunteered for the program because she genuinely believes she's bringing order to chaos. "Perfect," the mining executive said. "When can she start?" "She's being briefed tomorrow. We'll have her in Ouagadougou within 2 weeks." As the meeting adjourned, none of these men could have predicted what would actually happen. They were accustomed to controlling narratives, manipulating outcomes, and treating human beings as chess pieces. But they had forgotten something fundamental. The human heart cannot be programmed like a computer. And Amara's heart, despite her training, was still human. The next morning, Amara sat in a different room, this one smaller and more intimate. Beaumont sat across from her, a thick dossier between them. "This is everything we have on Ibrahim Traoré," he said, sliding the folder across the table. "Read it carefully. You need to understand him completely." Amara opened the folder and began reading. She learned that Ibrahim had grown up in a modest family, studied geology at university, and joined the military almost by accident when economic opportunities dried up. He had risen through the ranks, not through connections but through competence and an unusual quality in military officers, genuine concern for his soldiers, the Afwi. Reports detailed his involvement in the fight against jihadists, insurgencies in northern Burkina Faso, his growing disillusionment with French military support that seemed more interested in protecting corporate interests than African lives, and finally, his role in the coup that brought him to power. "He's idealistic," Amara observed, reading through psychological profiles compiled by French intelligence. "Dangerously so," Beaumont agreed. "He actually believes Africa can be independent, that Burkina Faso can process its own resources, keep its own wealth. He's inspiring similar movements across the Sahel, Mali, Niger, Guinea. It's becoming a contagion. And you want me to kill that inspiration? I want you to eliminate a threat to regional stability and French interests." Amara closed the folder. "What's my cover?" "NGO worker, education and women's empowerment. We've created a complete background. Previous work in Senegal and Ivory Coast, glowing recommendations, published papers on development theory. You'll enter Burkina Faso legitimately, establish yourself in civil society circles, and wait for an opportunity to get close to him. Timeline? 6 months maximum. We need this done before he completely dismantles French economic presence in the region." Amara nodded slowly. 6 months to infiltrate, seduce, and eliminate one of Africa's most protected leaders. It wasn't the most difficult assignment she'd received, but something about Ibrahim's file made her pause. Maybe it was the photos. Unlike most military leaders, he was often pictured with ordinary people, sitting on the ground with villagers, visiting wounded soldiers in hospitals, attending the funerals of those killed fighting jihadists. "Is there something wrong?" Beaumont asked, noting her hesitation. "No," Amara replied quickly. "I'm just memorizing details," but that wasn't entirely true. For the first time in her career, Amara felt a tiny seed of doubt. She pushed it down, buried it under layers of training and professional discipline. She was a weapon, and weapons didn't have doubts. She was wrong about that, too. 2 weeks later, Amara stepped off the plane at Ouagadougou Airport. The heat hit her immediately, a dry, intense heat that felt like opening an oven door. She had dressed modestly in light cotton clothing, her hair covered with a colorful African print scarf. She needed to blend in, to appear as just another foreign aid worker drawn to this struggling nation. The city sprawled before her, a mix of colonial architecture, modern buildings, and sprawling neighborhoods where metal-roofed houses crowded together. Red dust seemed to coat everything. Motorcycles buzzed through streets like mechanical insects, and the air smelled of grilled meat, diesel fuel, and something else, an indefinable scent that she would later recognize as hope mixed with desperation. Her cover organization had arranged accommodation in a modest apartment in the Ouaga 2000 district. Over the next week, Amara immersed herself in her role. She attended meetings with local NGOs, visited schools, and met with women's cooperatives. She listened more than she spoke, learning the rhythms of Ouagadougou, understanding the political tensions, gauging public opinion about Ibrahim Traoré. What surprised her was the genuine admiration most people expressed for their young leader. Unlike previous presidents who had enriched themselves and their families, Ibrahim lived modestly. He drove in unarmored civilian vehicles, ate in military canteens with soldiers, and regularly visited remote villages without the massive security entourages typical of African leaders. "He is one of us," an elderly woman told her at a market. "He doesn't forget where he comes from." "But isn't he a military dictator?" Amara asked carefully, probing for dissent she could potentially exploit. The woman laughed. "Dictator? He seized power from a dictator. The previous president was selling our country piece by piece." Captain Ibrahim said no more. "That is not dictatorship. That is courage." Amara filed away these observations. Understanding the target's popular support would be crucial for her mission. She needed to know not just the man, but why people believed in him. 3 weeks after her arrival, the opportunity she'd been waiting for finally came. The event was a public forum on education reform held at the University of Ouagadougou. Ibrahim Traoré was scheduled to speak, part of his regular practice of engaging directly with citizens rather than governing from behind palace walls. Amara had secured an invitation through her NGO credentials. She arrived early, positioning herself strategically in the third row, close enough to be noticed, far enough to avoid appearing overeager. She wore a simple white dress, elegant but not flashy, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wanted to project intelligence and professionalism. When Ibrahim entered the auditorium, Amara felt her trained observer's instincts kick in. He was shorter than she expected, perhaps 5'8", with a compact, athletic build. He wore military fatigues, but moved without the usual swagger of military men drunk on power. His eyes, even from a distance, were alert and intelligent. His speech was unscripted, delivered in a mix of French and Maori, the local language. He spoke about the importance of education in building true sovereignty, about young people being Burkina Faso's greatest resource, about breaking the mental chains of colonialism that taught Africans to see themselves as inferior. "They tell us we need their expertise," he said, his voice rising with passion. "They tell us we cannot manage our own resources, run our own industries, educate our own children. I say this is the same lie they told our grandparents to justify colonization. We are not children. We are a nation of builders, farmers, thinkers, warriors, and we will prove to the world what Africa can achieve when we control our own destiny." The audience erupted in applause. Amara found herself clapping too, then caught herself. "Stay detached," she reminded herself. "He's the target, not a hero." After the speech, there was a reception. This was the moment Amara had planned for. As Ibrahim moved through the crowd, shaking hands and speaking with students, Amara maneuvered into position. She carried a folder of documents about her education programs, and as Ibrahim approached, she deliberately stumbled, spilling papers across the floor. "Oh no," she exclaimed, dropping to her knees to gather them. Ibrahim immediately bent to help, picking up scattered documents before his security team could react. Their hands touched as they both reached for the same paper. "I'm so sorry," Amara said, looking up and meeting his eyes for the first time. Time seemed to pause. His eyes were brown with flecks of gold, surprisingly warm for a military commander. There was intelligence there, but also something else, a deep weariness, as if he carried the weight of the entire nation on his shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked in French. "Yes, thank you." "I'm just clumsy," Amara replied, allowing a slight blush to color her cheeks. It was a calculated move, appearing vulnerable, slightly embarrassed. Ibrahim smiled, and the smile transformed his face. "These events can be overwhelming. Are you with one of the universities?" "No, I work with an education NGO. We focus on girls' education in rural areas." Amara handed him one of her business cards, which she deliberately included in the spilled papers. Ibrahim examined the card. "Amara Dubois, your work sounds important. We need more programs like this." "That's why I was so interested in your speech, Mr. President. Your vision for education aligns with our organization's mission. Please, call me Ibrahim. Mr. President makes me sound old." He handed back her papers, carefully organized. "Perhaps we could discuss your work sometime. I'd like to know more about what you're doing in rural communities." This was almost too easy. "I would be honored, Captain." As Ibrahim moved on to greet others, his chief of security, a stern-looking man named Ousmane, leaned close to whisper something. Ibrahim glanced back at Amara one more time, then nodded. Amara felt a small thrill of victory. The first contact was made. The target had noticed her. Now the real work would begin. But as she left the auditorium that evening, Amara felt something unexpected, a tiny flutter of nervousness. She attributed it to the excitement of beginning a mission. She didn't yet recognize it for what it actually was, the first crack in her professional armor. Over the following weeks, Amara executed her plan with precision. She arranged for Ibrahim's office to receive regular reports on her NGO's activities, always including positive stories about rural communities and children benefiting from educational programs. She made sure to be present at public events where Ibrahim appeared, gradually becoming a familiar face. The breakthrough came 6 weeks into her mission. Ibrahim's office contacted her NGO, requesting a detailed briefing on girls' education initiatives. Amara was invited to the presidential palace. The palace itself was surprisingly modest, a functional building rather than the ornate structures favored by previous leaders. Security was tight but professional. Amara was screened thoroughly before being escorted to a conference room where Ibrahim waited with several ministers and education officials. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Amara presented her work with genuine knowledge and passion. Part of her cover was that she actually did understand development work, having studied it extensively as part of her training. She spoke about barriers to girls' education, cultural challenges, and innovative solutions her organization was implementing. Ibrahim listened intently, asking sharp questions that revealed his own deep knowledge of rural Burkina Faso. He had clearly spent time in these communities, understood their dynamics in ways that most elite politicians never did. "What do you need most?" he asked her directly. "Resources? Government support? Security in unstable regions?" "Honestly," Amara replied, "we need all of those things. But most of all, we need local leadership to champion these programs. When a village chief or military commander supports girls' education, everything becomes easier." Ibrahim nodded thoughtfully. "I'll assign military units in the north to provide security for your school programs, and I'll personally speak with traditional leaders in the regions where you work." After the meeting, as officials filed out, Ibrahim asked Amara to stay behind. "I want to see your work firsthand," he said. "Not as president, but as someone who cares about this country's future. Would you be willing to show me one of your rural programs?" This was exactly what Amara needed, time alone with the target, away from the palace and its security. "Of course. I'd be honored." "Good. We'll arrange something informal. Minimal security. I don't want to disrupt the children's learning." As Amara left the palace that day, she felt the mission shifting into its next phase. But she also felt something else, something she tried to ignore, curiosity about Ibrahim that went beyond professional necessity. Who was this man who seemed so different from the corrupt leaders she'd helped eliminate before? 2 weeks later, Amara found herself in a Toyota Land Cruiser, bouncing along a rutted dirt road toward a village 3 hours north of Ouagadougou. Ibrahim sat in the passenger seat, dressed in civilian clothes rather than military fatigues. Only 2 security personnel accompanied them, seated in the back, a remarkably small detail for a head of state. "You're not worried about security?" Amara asked, watching the sparse landscape roll past. Scrubland dotted with baobab trees, occasional clusters of compounds with thatched roofs. Ibrahim shrugged. "Out here, I'm safer than in the city. These people know me. I fought in these regions against jihadists. If I can't trust them, I can't trust anyone." They arrived at the village as the sun reached its zenith. Children immediately swarmed the vehicle, shouting, "Captain! Captain!" Ibrahim laughed, high-fiving the kids and asking them questions in Moray about their families and studies. The village school was a simple structure: mud walls, tin roof, wooden benches. About 40 girls sat in the shade, taught by a young local teacher. When Ibrahim entered, the girls stood respectfully, but he gestured for them to sit. "Please continue your lesson. We're just visiting." For the next hour, Amara watched Ibrahim interact with the children. He asked them about their favorite subjects, what they wanted to be when they grew up, whether they had enough supplies. He sat on the ground with them, completely unself-conscious about his status. One little girl, perhaps 10 years old, raised her hand shyly. "Captain, is it true you studied rocks?" Ibrahim's face lit up. "Yes, I studied geology." "Do you know what that is?" The girl shook her head. "It's the study of the earth, what's under our feet. Burkina Faso has gold, manganese, zinc, all kinds of valuable things hidden in the ground. I wanted to learn about them so we could use them to help our country." "Will you teach us?" another child asked. "That's why I'm trying to improve schools," Ibrahim replied seriously. "So you can learn everything, geology, engineering, medicine, whatever you want. This country needs your minds." After the visit, the village chief invited them for lunch. Rice with peanut sauce, shared from communal bowls. Ibrahim ate with his hands like everyone else, laughing at jokes and discussing community issues. On the drive back to Ouagadougou, as sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ibrahim was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "This is why I do what I do," he said softly. "Those children. They deserve better than what my generation inherited: corrupt leaders, foreign exploitation, endless conflict. They deserve a chance." Amara felt something shift inside her chest. It's a heavy burden to carry. Every leader should carry this burden. If you're in power for yourself, you're not a leader, you're a thief. He turned to look at her. "What brought you to this work, Amara? You could be in Paris, comfortable, safe. Why Africa?" The question caught her off guard. Her prepared backstory suddenly felt hollow. My mother was from Senegal. I grew up hearing her stories about Africa. I wanted to understand her world. This was partially true. Her mother was Senegalese. The lie was in the sentimentality. But looking at Ibrahim's open, trusting face, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced in years: shame. "You're lucky," Ibrahim said, "to know both worlds. You can be a bridge between what and what?" Amara thought. Between Africa and its exploiters? Between hope and assassination? That night, alone in her apartment, Amara filed a report to her handlers. "Trust established. Target increasingly comfortable with my presence. Recommend patience for maximum effectiveness." But what she didn't report was the growing knot in her stomach. The way Ibrahim's smile lingered in her thoughts. The quiet voice in her head asking, "What are you doing?" Months passed. Amara found herself spending more time at the palace, invited to strategy sessions on education policy, youth employment programs, and agricultural development. Ibrahim valued her perspective as someone who worked directly with communities. She became a familiar presence, someone the president could bounce ideas off. But it was more than professional. They began having tea together in the palace gardens, away from the endless meetings and political pressures. These conversations ranged from philosophical discussions about African identity and independence to lighter moments where Ibrahim would share stories from his military service or ask about Amara's childhood in France. "Did you always want to do this work?" Ibrahim asked one evening as they sat beneath a mango tree, the air cooling as night approached. Amara hesitated. Her cover story was well rehearsed, but something about these quiet moments made her want to tell the truth. "I wanted to make a difference, to fix things that were broken." "And do you think things can be fixed?" "I used to think so. Now I'm not sure. Maybe some things are too broken." Ibrahim smiled sadly. "Everything is broken, Amara. Every system, every government, every institution. But that doesn't mean we stop trying to fix them. My father used to say, even a cracked pot can hold water if you patch it with care." Your father sounds wise. He was a farmer, barely literate. But he understood life better than any PhD. Ibrahim's voice carried a note of longing. "He died when I was in university. Never saw me become a soldier. Certainly never imagined I'd become president. Sometimes I wish I could ask him what he thinks of all this." "What do you think he would say?" Ibrahim was quiet for a long moment. "He would probably ask if I'm still the same person, or if power has changed me. That would be his real question. Not whether I'm successful, but whether I'm still good." The vulnerability in his voice pierced through Amara's defenses. This wasn't the ruthless dictator her briefing materials had implied. This was a man haunted by self-doubt, terrified of becoming what he'd overthrown. "I think you're good," Amara said quietly, and meant it. Ibrahim looked at her, and in that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding, a connection that transcended their supposed roles. "Be careful, Amara," he said softly. "In Burkina Faso, trusting someone can get you killed." The irony made Amara's stomach clench. He was warning her about betrayal while she was the betrayer. That night, her handler sent an encrypted message. 6 months is up. Mission completion required. What's the delay? Amara stared at the message for a long time. She had had dozens of opportunities to complete the mission. Poison in his tea, a staged accident during one of his informal outings. Even a simple gunshot. She was skilled enough to breach palace security if needed, but every time she considered it, she saw his smile, heard his earnest voice talking about those village children, felt the genuine warmth in his presence. She typed back, "Target extremely well protected. Establishing deeper access for guaranteed success." It was a lie. Ibrahim's security was actually quite lax compared to most leaders. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She didn't want to kill him. The crisis came without warning. A jihadist attack on a military outpost near the northern border left 23 soldiers dead. It was one of the deadliest attacks in months, and the nation mourned. Amara watched Ibrahim address the nation on television, his face drawn with grief. "These were not just soldiers," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "They were sons, brothers, fathers. They died protecting their people from those who would destroy our way of life. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten." The next day, Ibrahim announced he would personally attend the funeral in the northern town where most of the fallen soldiers came from. His security team strongly advised against it. The region was dangerous, the roads vulnerable to ambush. Ibrahim refused to listen. "These men died for Burkina Faso. The least I can do is honor them in death." Amara found herself at the palace, ostensibly to drop off education reports, but really because she was worried. She found Ibrahim in his office, staring at photographs of the dead soldiers. "You shouldn't go," she said without preamble. He looked up, surprised to see her. "I have to. It's too dangerous. You're the president. The country needs you alive. The country needs to know its leaders don't hide behind walls while soldiers die." He stood up, and she saw how exhausted he looked. Dark circles under his eyes, lines of stress around his mouth. "You don't understand, Amara. Those men believed in something. They believed Burkina Faso could be different. If I don't honor that belief, what am I fighting for? You're fighting to stay alive so you can actually change things." Amara's voice rose, surprising both of them with its intensity. "You think dying at a funeral makes you a hero? It makes you a fool. Dead martyrs can't build schools or reform economies." Ibrahim walked around the desk until he stood directly in front of her. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung in the air between them. Why did she care? This was supposed to be a mission. Ibrahim was supposed to be a target, nothing more. "Because—" Amara struggled for words, her carefully maintained cover story crumbling. "Because the world has too few people who actually give a damn about something bigger than themselves. And you what? And I can't stand the thought of you dying." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Ibrahim's expression softened. "Amara, what are we doing?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she whispered. He reached out, gently touching her cheek. "I think about you all the time. It's probably foolish. A leader shouldn't have distractions. But I can't help it." Amara felt tears burning her eyes. "Ibrahim, there are things about me you don't know." "Things that everyone has secrets," he interrupted gently. "I don't need your past. I just need to know, do you feel this too?" She should have lied. She should have maintained her cover, completed her mission, and disappeared into the night. Instead, she said the most dangerous truth of her life. "Yes, God help me. Yes." Ibrahim pulled her close, and they stood there in the office, holding each other like drowning people clutching at life itself. In that moment, Amara understood that her mission was over. Not completed, destroyed. She could no more kill Ibrahim than she could kill herself. But that realization brought a new terror. Her handlers in Paris would not accept failure. And when they discovered she had compromised the mission, they would send someone else, someone who wouldn't hesitate. She had to tell him the truth. It happened 3 nights later, during a storm that turned Ouagadougou's streets into rivers and the sky into a battlefield of lightning and thunder. Amara stood outside Ibrahim's private office in the palace, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The guard recognized her and let her through without question. She was a regular presence now. She found Ibrahim at his desk, reviewing documents by lamplight. The power had gone out, as it often did during storms. "Amara," he smiled when he saw her. "What brings you here so late? I need to tell you something." Her voice shook despite her training. Ibrahim heard the tremor and immediately stood. "What's wrong?" "I need you to listen to everything before you react. Please." Something in her tone made him nod slowly. "All right," Amara took a deep breath. There was no easy way to do this. No gentle path through the truth. "My name is Amara Dubois, that part is true. But I'm not really an NGO worker. I mean, I do that work, but it's a cover. My real employer is French intelligence, the DGSE. Ibrahim's expression didn't change, but she saw his body tense slightly. "I was sent here 8 months ago with one mission, to get close to you, gain your trust, and then eliminate you. Assassination made to look like an accident or natural causes. The French government, along with several mining corporations, see you as a threat to their interests in the Sahel region. They want you gone." Now Ibrahim's face went pale. He sat down slowly, never taking his eyes off her. "I had multiple opportunities to complete the mission," Amara continued, tears now streaming down her face. "In the village during our tea sessions 12 other times. I'm trained in poisons, staged accidents, close quarters killing. I could have done it easily. Why didn't you?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a mission and became my life. Because you're not a target, you're the best person I've ever met. Because I fell in love with you, and now I'm probably going to get both of us killed because of it." Thunder rolled across the sky, filling the silence between them. "My handlers are getting impatient," Amara said. "They'll know soon that I've compromised the mission. They'll either send someone else or they'll eliminate me first and then send someone else. Either way, you're in danger. I came to warn you and to confess what I am. I'm an assassin, Ibrahim. I've killed 11 people in service to France's geopolitical interests. I'm not the person you think I am." Ibrahim stood slowly and walked to the window, staring out at the storm-lashed city. For a long time, he said nothing. Amara stood frozen, waiting for judgment, for rage, for the security team to burst in and arrest her. Finally, Ibrahim spoke. "I knew," Amara's head snapped up. "What? Not everything." "Not your mission specifically, but I knew you weren't just an NGO worker." He turned to face her. "I've survived 3 coup attempts, Amara. You don't stay alive in African politics by being naive. My security chief flagged you as suspicious within days of your arrival. Your background was too perfect, your timing too convenient. We've been watching you. Then why did you let me get close?" Ibrahim's smile was sad and infinitely tired. "Because I wanted to believe you might be real. And because I was lonely and you made me feel human again. I took a calculated risk that whatever you were hiding, you weren't an immediate threat. I was right about that part, at least. I'm so sorry," Amara sobbed. "I'm so incredibly sorry." "Don't be," Ibrahim said quietly. "You told me the truth. That took more courage than pulling a trigger. What happens now?" Ibrahim considered this for a long moment. "Now you leave Burkina Faso. Tonight, before your handlers figure out you've broken. I'll have my people take you to the border. From there, you're on your own. And then you disappear. Change your name, your face if you have to. Find somewhere the French intelligence services won't look for you. And you live, Amara. You live the life of a good person, not an assassin. What about you? They'll just send someone else. Probably. But at least I'll be expecting it now. And I won't be distracted by a beautiful woman who makes me forget to be careful." He walked over and cupped her face in his hands. "Thank you for choosing my life over your mission. That's more than I had any right to expect." "I love you," Amara whispered. "I know. I love you too. That's why you have to go." Within an hour, Amara was in an unmarked vehicle headed east toward the border with Ghana. 2 of Ibrahim's most trusted soldiers drove, armed and alert. Amara had been given a new passport, cash in multiple currencies, and a letter of transit signed by Ibrahim himself. She looked back once as they left Ouagadougou, seeing the city lights fade into the stormy darkness. Somewhere back there, Ibrahim was already preparing for the next attack, the next threat, the endless battle to keep his country free. At the border, the soldiers handed her over to contacts who would get her across without official record. "Captain said to tell you something," one soldier said. He said, "The lion still roars." Amara smiled through tears. That was Ibrahim, defiant to the end. She crossed into Ghana, then made her way through Togo to Benin, constantly moving, always looking over her shoulder. She liquidated her French bank accounts before intelligence could freeze them, sold everything she owned, and essentially became a ghost. 2 months later, in a small apartment in Dakar, Senegal, Amara started a new life, not as an intelligence operative or an assassin, but as exactly what she had pretended to be, someone working in education and development. She volunteered with local NGOs, taught French to children, and tried to atone for her past by doing genuine good. But every night, she watched the news from Burkina Faso. Ibrahim was still alive, still fighting, both literally against jihadist insurgencies and metaphorically against foreign interference. The French had not given up. She monitored intelligence chatter and twice intercepted information about planned operations against him. Each time, she found anonymous ways to warn his security team. 3 years passed. Amara built a life in Dakar that was modest but meaningful. She worked with a local organization focusing on literacy and girls' education in rural Senegal. The work was real, the impact tangible. She wasn't saving the world, but she was changing small corners of it. She had made peace with her past, or at least learned to live with it. The 11 people she had killed for French intelligence still haunted her dreams sometimes. But she tried to balance that karma by helping others live better lives. She kept her head down, stayed off social media, used cash instead of credit cards, and moved apartments every 6 months. She had heard through back channels that French intelligence had officially listed her as deceased, killed in an operation gone wrong. It was safer that way. Dead people didn't have to watch their backs quite as carefully, but she never stopped monitoring news from Burkina Faso. Ibrahim was still alive, still fighting, still managing to survive in one of Africa's most dangerous political environments. There had been more coup attempts, more assassination plots, more pressure from foreign powers trying to remove him. Each time he survived, Amara felt a surge of relief so powerful it physically weakened her. One evening, as she walked home from the market carrying vegetables for dinner, she noticed a young woman following her. The woman was good, patient, maintaining distance, blending into crowds. But Amara had been trained by some of the best intelligence operatives in the world. She could spot a tail from a kilometer away. Instead of going home, Amara led the woman on a circuitous route through Dakar's streets, finally stopping at a quiet cafe near the ocean. She sat at an outdoor table, ordered mint tea, and waited. 5 minutes later, the young woman appeared and sat down across from her without asking permission. "Amara Dubois?" the woman asked in French. "That's not my name anymore," Amara replied calmly, though her pulse quickened. "Who are you?" "My name doesn't matter. I work for someone who needs your help. I don't do that work anymore." "I know. That's precisely why he wants you." "He?" The woman slid a photograph across the table. Ibrahim Traoré, standing with a group of village elders, smiling despite the exhaustion visible in his eyes. Amara's breath caught. "What does he want?" "There's going to be another attempt on his life. A serious one. French special forces, supported by mercenaries. They're planning to make it look like a jihadist attack. The intelligence is solid. Our source inside French defense confirmed it." "Why tell me?" "Because Captain Traoré said if we needed to warn him about something this serious, we should go through you. He said you would know whether to trust the information, and if it's real, you would find a way to help." Amara's mind raced. This could be a trap, French intelligence drawing her out by using Ibrahim as bait. Or it could be real. Either way, she couldn't ignore it. "When is the attack planned?" 2 weeks, during his visit to the northern provinces. They're going to ambush his convoy in a remote area where they can control the narrative afterward. Amara closed her eyes. Ibrahim always insisted on visiting frontline areas, despite the danger. It made him an easy target if someone had good intelligence on his movements. What do you need from me? Captain Traoré won't cancel the visit. He's too stubborn. But he needs to know the exact details so he can prepare. Routes, timing, mercenary profiles, everything. You still have contacts in French intelligence, even if they think you're dead. Can you verify this information and get us additional details? It was incredibly risky. Reaching out to old contacts could expose that she was alive. But Ibrahim's life hung in the balance. I'll need 3 days, Amara said. Tell him to delay the visit by at least 72 hours, citing weather or security concerns. That will give me time to confirm and get details. The young woman nodded. He said to tell you something if you agreed to help. What? He said, the lion still dreams of the warrior who chose mercy over duty. Tears pricked Amara's eyes. After 3 years, he still remembered. Still cared. Tell him the warrior dreams of the lion, too, and tell him to be careful. I didn't spare his life just so he could throw it away being heroic, the young woman smiled. He said you'd say something like that. Amara spent the next 3 days calling in every favor she had, reaching out to old contacts who didn't know she was alive. She posed as a journalist researching French military operations in the Sahel. She hacked into encrypted communications using skills she had promised herself she'd never use again. She cross-referenced information from multiple sources. The intelligence was real. French special forces with logistical support from a private military company were planning an elaborate ambush. They would strike Ibrahim's convoy with heavy weapons, then plant evidence suggesting jihadist involvement. It was a sophisticated operation with a high probability of success. But Amara found something else in the intelligence. Detailed information about Ibrahim's security protocols, travel patterns, and personal habits. Someone close to him was feeding information to the French. A mole inside his inner circle. She compiled everything into an encrypted file, then used a secure channel to send it to the contact in Burkina Faso. Along with the intelligence, she included a personal message. Ibrahim, there's a traitor in your security team. Someone with access to your schedule and movement patterns. Root them out before the visit. And please, for once in your stubborn life, take the threat seriously. The world needs you alive. I need you alive! 3 days later, news broke that Burkina Faso's deputy security chief had been arrested for espionage. The man had apparently been on French intelligence payroll for 2 years, providing information about the president's security arrangements. The planned visit to the northern provinces happened a week later than originally scheduled. Ibrahim's convoy took an unexpected route, traveled with heavy military escort, and arrived without incident. In Dakar, Amara watched the news footage of Ibrahim greeting villagers and soldiers in the north. He was alive. The mission had been thwarted. That night, her burner phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The lion thanks his guardian angel. The mole was rooted out. The trap was avoided. You saved more than just one life today. You saved what we're trying to build. I hope you know how extraordinary you are. Amara saved the message, even though she knew she should delete it. Some things were worth the risk, but French intelligence didn't give up easily. Frustrated by repeated failures to eliminate Ibrahim, they changed tactics. Instead of direct assassination, they began supporting opposition groups inside Burkina Faso, funding dissent, and spreading propaganda through social media. Amara watched from Dakar as the pressure on Ibrahim's government intensified. Economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, international media campaigns painting him as a dictator. The playbook was familiar. She had been part of similar operations in her previous life. She started her own counter-campaign, modest but effective. Using her knowledge of intelligence operations, she began exposing the foreign funding behind opposition groups. She leaked documents showing how mining companies were bankrolling political unrest. She wrote anonymous articles detailing the colonial patterns repeating themselves. It wasn't much, but it helped. International solidarity movements started forming. African intellectuals began writing in support of Burkina Faso's sovereignty. The narrative began to shift slowly from unstable military regime to legitimate resistance against neo-colonialism. Amara's phone rang one evening. "Unknown number," she answered cautiously. "Is this Amara?" A woman's voice, speaking French with a West African accent. "Who is this?" "My name is Fatou. I'm Captain Traoré's chief of staff. He asked me to reach out to you. We have a proposal. I'm listening. The captain knows you've been helping from afar. He's grateful. But he wants to know if you would consider coming back. Not to Burkina Faso, that's still too dangerous. But to work officially with our diaspora outreach program. Help us build international support, counter the propaganda, organize solidarity networks. We can provide security, a salary, everything official and above board." Amara's heart raced. The offer was tempting, a chance to fight openly for something she believed in, to be part of Ibrahim's mission without hiding. "I don't know if that's wise," she said carefully. "My presence could make him a target. If French intelligence finds out I'm alive and working with him—" "They already know," Fatou interrupted. "We've intercepted communications. They tracked your counterintelligence operations back to Senegal. They know you're alive and they know you're helping us. The question is whether you keep fighting from the shadows or step into the light. What does Ibrahim want? He wants you safe. But he also said, 'A warrior shouldn't have to fight alone.'" Those were his exact words. Amara looked around her small apartment, her carefully constructed safe life, her anonymous existence. It had been peaceful, but it had also been lonely. She had been fighting for Ibrahim in Burkina Faso from the margins, always hiding, always afraid. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Tell him I accept. But on one condition. What's that? I do this as myself. Amara Dubois, former intelligence operative who changed sides because she saw the truth. No more fake names, no more cover stories. If I'm going to fight, I fight as the person I've become, not the person I was. Fatou laughed. He said you'd say something like that too. He said, Amara always chooses the harder right over the easier wrong. Welcome to the team. 2 weeks later, Amara held a press conference in Dakar. It was a calculated risk, but one worth taking. She stood before international journalists and told her story, how she had been recruited by French intelligence, trained as an assassin, sent to eliminate Ibrahim Traoré, and ultimately chose to betray her mission because she discovered the truth about what was happening in the Sahel. I am not a hero, she said, her voice steady despite the cameras and the knowledge that her old employers were watching. I am a reformed villain. I participated in operations that violated sovereignty, that treated African lives as disposable, that put corporate profits above human dignity. I am here today to say I was wrong, and I will spend the rest of my life fighting to undo the harm I caused. The press conference went viral. Within hours, it was international news. French officials denied everything, calling her a disturbed former employee with delusions. But the damage was done. The world was paying attention. Amara received death threats. Several, in fact, including some that were clearly from professional sources. But she also received messages of support from across Africa and beyond. People who had long suspected foreign interference in African affairs now had a whistleblower confirming their suspicions. She moved to Accra, Ghana, where Burkina Faso's embassy provided security. She worked openly now, coordinating with solidarity movements, giving interviews, writing articles. She became the public face of resistance to neo-colonialism in the Sahel, and always, in everything she did, she was thinking of Ibrahim, still in Burkina Faso, still fighting, still somehow alive despite everything. They communicated occasionally now through secure channels. Never about anything personal. Both understood that their relationship was a weapon their enemies could use. But sometimes, late at night, she would receive simple messages. The schools are multiplying. 83 new ones this year. We completed the solar power project in the north. 5 villages with electricity for the first time. A little girl asked me today if it's true that a woman helped save my life. I told her yes, and that women are the real revolutionaries. Each message was a gift. A reminder that their shared sacrifice meant something, that the fight continued. That hope persisted. 4 years after Amara left Ouagadougou in a storm-swept night, an opportunity arose. The African Union was hosting a summit in Accra on youth empowerment and economic sovereignty. Ibrahim was scheduled to speak. It would be their first time in the same room since the confession. Amara almost didn't attend. The risk of seeing him, of all those carefully controlled emotions breaking free, seemed too dangerous. But Fatu convinced her. "He wants to see you," she said, "even if it's just from across a room. 4 years, Amara. You both deserve at least that." The summit was held at a large conference center. Security was intense. Heads of state from across Africa were attending. Amara sat in the audience, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair shorter than Ibrahim would remember. When Ibrahim took the stage, her breath caught. He looked older, more lines around his eyes, his military bearing somehow both stronger and wearier. But his voice, when he spoke, still carried that passionate conviction that had first captivated her. "We are told that Africa cannot feed itself, cannot govern itself, cannot innovate or create," Ibrahim said. "But these are lies designed to justify continued exploitation. I have seen with my own eyes what Africans can accomplish when given the chance. I have seen farmers double their yields using techniques developed by local agronomists. I have seen engineers build solar grids that bring light to villages forgotten by the world. I have seen teachers educate children who will become the leaders of tomorrow." He paused and his eyes swept the audience. For a moment, just a moment, his gaze found Amara's. Time stopped. Everything else fell away. "But most powerfully," Ibrahim continued, his voice softer, "I have seen people change. I have seen those who were taught to exploit instead choose to protect. I have seen those who were trained for destruction instead choose to build. And that gives me more hope than any economic plan or military victory. Because if individuals can change, so can nations. So can the world." The audience applauded, but Amara barely heard it. She was trapped in that moment of eye contact, that wordless communication that said everything they couldn't speak aloud. After his speech, there was a reception. Amara stood in the corner, champagne untouched in her hand, watching Ibrahim navigate the crowd of dignitaries and diplomats. She should leave, she told herself. This was torture. Then he was there, somehow having crossed the room without her noticing. Standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one from 4 years ago. "Hello, Amara," he said quietly. "Ibrahim." Her voice barely worked. "You look well. So do you. Still alive, I see," he smiled. "Thanks to you, more than once." They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by people yet utterly alone together. "I've followed your work," Ibrahim said. "The press conference. Your advocacy. You've become quite famous. Infamous, more like. I've made a lot of enemies. Enemies are proof you're fighting for something that matters." He paused. "Are you happy?" The question cut straight through all pretense. "Are you?" I asked first. Amara considered lying, then decided they had told enough lies to last a lifetime. "No, I'm fulfilled. I'm purposeful. I'm making a difference. But happy? No. Because the one thing I want most, I can't have." Ibrahim's expression softened with pain. "I know the feeling. Do you ever regret it?" Amara asked. "Letting me live? Trusting me? I brought nothing but danger into your life." "You brought truth," Ibrahim corrected. "And love? Even if we couldn't keep it, knowing it existed, that kept me human through everything else. So no, I don't regret it. Not for a moment." Someone called Ibrahim's name, a minister needing his attention. Their moment was ending. "I should go," Ibrahim said. "I know." He hesitated, then said quickly, quietly, "If things were different, if I wasn't who I am and you weren't who you are, if the world was kinder." "I know," Amara said again, tears threatening. "I know. Me too." He touched her hand briefly. Just a brush of fingers, barely a second, but it sent electricity through her entire body. Then he was gone, pulled back into the crowd of officials and responsibilities. Amara left the reception early. She walked along Accra's coastline, watching waves crash against the shore under a star-filled sky. Somewhere in that vast continent, Ibrahim was probably on a plane back to Burkina Faso, back to danger and duty and the fight that would probably kill him someday. But tonight, they had seen each other. Tonight, they had remembered that once, in a complicated world, two complicated people had found something pure. It would have to be enough. Amara sat in her office in Accra, now the director of a Pan-African organization fighting for economic sovereignty and transparency. Her hair had gray streaks now. She was 38, no longer the young assassin who had arrived in Ouagadougou a lifetime ago. On her desk was a photograph, slightly faded, that someone had snapped at that AU summit. It showed Ibrahim speaking on stage, and in the audience, barely visible, was Amara watching him. You couldn't tell from the photo what emotions passed between them, but she remembered every second Ibrahim was still alive, still president, still fighting. There had been more attempts on his life. Some she had helped thwart, others his own security had handled. He had become a symbol across Africa of resistance to foreign dominance, a beacon of hope for young people who believed their continent could chart its own course. They saw each other occasionally at international events, always public, always proper, always aching with everything left unsaid. But they also carried on their work. Amara's organization had helped expose dozens of corrupt mining deals, assisted grassroots movements across Africa, and built networks of solidarity that supported leaders like Ibrahim who dared to challenge the old order. The world hadn't changed overnight. Colonial mindsets still existed. Exploitation continued. But cracks were appearing in the old structures, and through those cracks, light was streaming in. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but she recognized the pattern. Ibrahim only used burner phones now, never the same number twice. Thank you. For everything. For the warning last month. For the intelligence about the mining contracts. For being the guardian I never knew I needed. Amara smiled, typing back. Thank you. For showing me what integrity looks like, for proving that some people actually mean what they say, for giving me a cause worth fighting for. Do you ever think about that night in the storm? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. They rarely acknowledged the personal anymore. It was too painful. But tonight she decided to be honest. Every single day. Me too. Every single day. Do you think we'll ever... She couldn't finish the question. There were too many ways to end it, and all of them hurt. His response took a long time. In another life, perhaps. Or in this one, when we're both old and the fight is done and we can finally rest. But until then, know that you are loved, completely, constantly, even from a distance. Amara wiped tears from her eyes. And you are loved. The man you are, the leader you've become, the heart that refused to harden. I am so proud of you. We're a good team, Amara, even apart. The best. She deleted the messages, as always, but she kept the words in her heart, where they joined all the others, a collection of moments and confessions and truths that sustained her through lonely nights and dangerous days. Outside her window, Accra hummed with evening life. Somewhere in that vast and complicated continent, Ibrahim was probably standing on his balcony in Ouagadougou, looking at the same stars she could see from her window. They had both chosen a harder path. They had both sacrificed personal happiness for something larger. But in doing so, they had proved something important, that people could change, that love could transform, that even broken people could build something beautiful. The assassin who fell in love had become an advocate for justice. The leader who should have been killed had become a symbol of hope. And between them, in the space of everything they could never have, they had created something that would outlast both their lives. A story proving that the human heart, at its best, will always choose love over hate, truth over lies, and hope over despair. The end.